In this video, we're going to explore the job setup and how it's relating to the Sabre ETO add-on. The goals of the video are going to be to review the Sabre ETO setup, review adding user-defined fields to pages, and to highlight what features are included when you buy the basic version versus buying the advanced or the suite option. So what we're going to do is quickly jump into the software. To access the Sabre ETO add-on setup, you're going to access it the same way that you would if you had the Business Central Jobs module, just without the add-on. So you come here into Job Setup, and you'll notice the numbering section, they're as they were originally. So there's no additional fields that have been added to those areas. What we've done is we've created this additional Sabre ETO Fast tab. And the idea behind that is that you would be able to very clearly see what was given to you when you bought Business Central Jobs just standalone from Microsoft versus the additional features and setup options that you have when you've purchased the Sabre ETO add-on. So the first two permission sets we have here are going to be for who is going to be identified as the planner within your BOM planning lines and who is identified as a designer. So these two permission sets are created by you. They can be named whichever you want. We've chosen to create them as ETO Planner and ETO Designer. That being said, you have the ability, because you will be creating these permission sets before you add them to these fields, you can call them whichever you'd like. So to create these, what I did was I used the search button. So I've clicked on the permission sets and I clicked here on new. So what you would do is you would just name the permission set whatever you like. You don't have to add any kind of tables or anything like that. The whole idea is that you've just created these to be able to identify and add these permission sets to specific user cards. The idea behind this is that within Sabre ETO, you guys will have the ability to be able to limit which functions can be done on a planning line based on which permission set that they have. So for example, a ETO planner is someone who will be doing the dispositioning, who will be doing the procurement of the item. They'll be deciding whether or not you want to take from inventory, get a purchase quote, create a purchase order directly linked to the job line. But the idea is that if you've got the designer permission set, you can't do planner functions, and if you have the planner permission set, then you can't do design functions. So it allows to create a bit of a workflow and an approval process that isn't inherent within the jobs module natively. The designer permission set allows users to be able to import bills of material from Excel. They can manually add item, GL text lines. They would indicate the quantity. They would indicate the date that they want things brought in, and from there they can indicate when they are ready using a Boolean field on the BOM planning lines, when they are ready for the planner to pick it up and then start deciding how they want to get that demand met. The default lead time buffer field, this allows you, as you are creating purchase quotes or creating production orders from the BOM planning line, this would give you the ability to be able to indicate if you want those supply orders to have a due date that is a little bit earlier perhaps than the planning date. So for an example, if you had a planning date that indicated that you wanted the parts to be ready for production on April 14th, if you had indicated a 1-day lead time buffer in this field, then the supply order that was created for this would have a due date of 1 day earlier, which would be April 13th. Post-production job journal automatically. So when you have the suite option, you have the ability to create a production order that's linked to the BOM planning line. And when you do that, you can indicate what happens when you output the production order. So when that production order is done and you've indicated that the parts have been produced, this indicates whether or not you want the job ledger entry and the cost information to automatically post to the job. Or in other cases, people will leave this turned off, and that means that the production order gets created. You're going to do your normal functionality to consume and output and complete that job, but once you're done that, it's actually just going to increase your on-hand inventory, and then they would use a feature like relieve from inventory to actually issue that inventory to the production order when they're ready, which could perhaps be at a later date. So this just indicates how we want that output and finishing that production order to affect the job if there is a link to a production order from the BOM planning line. And again, that's something that's available in the suite option. Use system work date. So this is the ability to use the system work date defined in your Business Central for all the date calculations, which lead to BOM line coloring and things like that. Otherwise, it will just use the current date. Highlight text lines. This gives you the ability to be able to have any lines that are created on your BOM planning line that have a type of text. They will be bolded and they will be highlighted. This helps people to be able to differentiate different bills of material or different information in the BOM planning line so that they can clearly see text information or comments. Build order type. So again, if you've selected the suite option, you will have the ability to be able to use the build to job functionality. When you do that, you have to define whether or not you want it to create you a production order or an assembly order. So what this means is that if we've got production orders selected, when we select build to job, it would go ahead and create us a corresponding firm planned or released production order. And if we have assembly selected, it would go ahead and it would create us an assembly order. Separate production order for each planning line. So again, this is available in the suite option. So if this is set to true, it's going to create a separate production order for each planning line when the build to order type is production order. So if it's set to false, it's just going to create an individual production order for each planning line, basically, which means that if you have multiple BOM planning lines that were selected, it will create you multiple production orders. Default production order status. So when you've selected build to order, you have the ability to set whether or not these are going to default as a firm planned production order or a released production order. Purchase order cost reset job cost. If this is true, it will automatically update job costs on the linked production orders when changed by the buyer. Requisition worksheet template. So there is a function, if you are a planner, to be able to copy that BOM planning line to a requisition worksheet so that a purchasing person can then go and carry out the purchase orders. If that's the case, then you want to indicate which requisition worksheet to use, which batch to use. So again, this just helps to carry through and complete that functionality. So these are just set up from the system the same way that the requisition worksheet uses templates and batches today. Job journal template and job journal batch. So again, you will have the ability on your BOM planning lines as a planner to be able to relieve from inventory, as an example. So when you relieve from inventory, the system is going to do a negative adjustment going through the item journal, and it creates a job journal entry. So the same idea that we need to be able to indicate the job journal template and the job journal batch that we want the system to use so that it can create that entry for us. Markup type. On a job, you have the ability to be able to indicate a markup for your BOM planning lines. So you can indicate when you enter a value on the line, do you want that to be a percentage or do you want that to be a multiplier, so that when it's doing the calculation, it would know whether or not it's a percentage or just a number. And you've got your markup calculation on. So we can indicate here whether or not you want the markup to be calculated based on the unit price or based on the unit cost. So in this section of the video, we're going to look at the Sabre user-defined fields. We're going to look at the purpose of the user-defined fields, how to set up user-defined fields, and how to activate user-defined fields. User-defined fields were created because we had identified that within every project there was always a handful of fields in different areas where people wanted to add new fields to add additional information that they needed for reports or to run their business or to make decisions. And rather than having users have to always come to us and have us customize additional fields in these areas, we've empowered them to be able to activate user-defined fields in different areas of the software. So where you access these user-defined fields to be able to set them up are in company information. So we're going to search for company information, and up here we've got this Set Up Sabre User Fields option. So I'm going to select that, and you'll see here that you can create these user-defined fields in the customer, the vendor, the item, sales header, sales line, purchase header, purchase line, jobs, job tasks, job planning lines, and even in serial lot information and item types. So lots of areas to be able to add those user-defined fields. So let's say, for example, we want to add a new field on the job card. So you'll notice here we've got 10 different fields available to us. So what we're going to do is we click on Edit List here, and we're going to indicate the field caption. So this is what we want the field name to be. So job approval date, let's say. The field data type, you have the ability to be able to indicate whether it's a text, code, option, decimal, integer, Boolean, date, time, or date time field. And then what you would do is you would set. So this is the really nice ability to be able to force users to enter data specifically how you need it. This becomes increasingly important when you do want to do reports and things like that off of these fields. A lot of the times when you just add a regular text field, people can start putting in data inconsistently. It becomes really hard to take that data and then do queries and searches and reports on it. So sometimes what you may want to have is an option field as an example, so that you are forcing the user to select from the criteria that you've given them. In this case, we can see that it's a date field, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to indicate that it's a date. I need to activate the field, so just by adding this line, it doesn't mean that it's going to be available on my job card just yet. So what I want to do is I want to enable the field active, and you've got field editable. So this just indicates whether or not I want my users to be able to edit that field. Here I can indicate whether or not this was a new or a existing customer. So this is just to kind of show you the different field types that we can select, or maybe we'll just call it new customer. And we're going to make that a Boolean field. So if it's a new customer, it can be indicated on the job card. We can also select, say for example, an option field. Oh, and we just need to make sure that we activate that. So again, we can add something like an option field. So maybe what we want to do here is say order type. We're going to do option. If we select the option field, we have to tell the system what the options are that we want to give to our users. So up here in the ribbon, I'm going to select user field options. So maybe here I'm going to say residential and commercial. So again, I'm just giving the ability to provide options so that I can take that data and use it later. You can also do things like a code field, so you can actually look up to another table. So say for example you wanted to be able to look up, associate a resource that you have in the system because they are the lead site manager or some user-defined field that you've created. You could have a code that's a lookup to the resource table, and you can indicate which fields you want to look up. So again, lots of different options that you can leverage here. So once you've gotten these enabled, you're going to need to access, you're going to have to close out of Business Central and then go back in. So now if we navigate to our jobs page, we should see these new user-defined fields and be able to interact with them. So if we scroll down here, we can see that we've got a new field called Sabre ETO. So these are defined fields that we've created. They were gaps in the system that we found that we wanted to add as a default every single time. But the Sabre user fields are the fields that are defined by you that you've turned on and activated in the previous step. So if we expand that, we can now see job approval date. If I drill into that, I can see that this is going to be a date field. So I can't just write any kind of text, so it has that validation there. So it's only going to expect a date. New customer. So I can indicate yes or no in that field. And then in order type, if I click on my lookup, you'll see that I have the ability to indicate only residential or commercial, so that again, I'm forced to select the criteria that has been given and defined for me. If there are any questions about anything that you've seen or any questions that you have while using the module, please never hesitate to contact us using the contact information provided here.